So we would like to get started. First of all, I wanted to set the room. We have the Honorable Judge Joe Brown with us tonight, giving us his time, energy, intelligence, um, lifelong wisdom. And we've got some questions for Judge Joe Brown. We got some topics that we want to be able to cover. And I'm sure y'all know, if you know Judge Joe Brown, like I know Judge Joe Brown, you will thoroughly be enlightened and educated. So without
Who
further
is that
ado,
guy? Who's that guy you've been describing? He sounds like he's all right. I wish I knew him.
that's you, Judge Joe. That's you. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
that's me? Oh, boy. Wow.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
All right. I'm gonna bring some people. Logic. We can bring some of the people. Like, let's bring about 4 people if we can to the stage. And you guys just come to the stage. You can raise your hand. I got 3 people that's coming in, that's requesting to come in. And we're about to bring like the 3 people or 4 people in. And I just don't want to overload the stage, and we can keep better track of it. And you can come if we put you off the stage, it's just to make room for other people that can come on. So I want to see some hands. Anybody got their hand up?
Yeah, I got 3 already. Got them in, sis. If you want me to, if you want me to do the 4th one, I got 3 up now. One more request, I can pull up 4, and we can keep it there till you're ready for more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's
All
pull
right.
a 4th person up. I see. Tell the truth. I hope that's truth. Tell the truth. Do you have a question for Judge Joe Brown?
I certainly do. First of all, I thank you for the space. I thank the judge for making his time available. And I want to encourage everyone to strap in, open up your ears, maybe get a notepad, and let's all learn something. That being said, I wanted to ask the judge for his opinion, if he's had a chance to look at all at the recent legislation that Bobby Rush and the others got through, the anti-lynching bill, and also a quick thumbnail as to what he thinks with what's supposed to happen with the bill with George Floyd's name on it. And there's
Okay.
others, but those are meaty enough, I think.
Okay. There really is no use served by this anti-lynch thing. You saw it 2 years ago after Jesse Smollett faked that thing in Chicago about getting the noose around his neck. That some Chicago detectives I interviewed on a show I did say they had recorded on the security camera of a costume shop, and Smollett and his 2 Nigerian friends were seen purchasing that noose in October. That was supposed to be the anti lynch bill. That same bill has been sitting around Congress since 1997, when Conyers introduced it, and they couldn't get any traction with it. So now it's come out as the Emmett Till anti lynch bill. Actually, what is it going to do? It makes it a hate crime, but what they're talking about carries the death penalty or life in the penitentiary without parole in most states, and also under the federal system. So, what are they going to add to the mix if somebody were to go out and actually lynch somebody from a tree? Add 5 years to the corpse, or 5 years to a life without parole sentence? It's just frou-frou. It's trying to grandstand. And then the other thing is, I don't recall anything other than statistical anomalies about people being lynched like they used to 60, 70 years ago. So there's not really a need for it, but I would suggest that everybody get a copy of the congressional record or the publications from the U.S. Uh, well, basically, it's their information store, bookstore, or you can go to your federal building and go down there and get a copy of the piece of legislation, and you see it doesn't have much to do with black people. It's basically an LGBTQ oriented proposition, and more power to them for being astute in their politics, but it doesn't have much to do with black people. That said, uh, there is some other stuff they could pay attention to. The George Floyd thing. All right. My problem with the George Floyd thing is kind of esoteric. In all the years that they have had legislation that peripherally deals with black people, they've never had any that talks about us directly as colored, Negro, African American, Afro American, or black, or has anybody's name on it outside of a holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King. And it troubles me that the first piece of legislation that's got somebody's name on it is not Emmett Till, who was a young lad, is a martyr, but the thing to deal with police reform, which it doesn't when you read the bill, is for somebody who is not one of our more savory characters. I understand it was a bad thing for him to be murdered, but that's not one of the people that we need to be making known to American history as somebody with something named after him. I can think of a lot of other people that might be the caption on a bill to deal with police reform. But unfortunately, the bill as it is does not much deal with police reform. There is a need for federal legislation to match what you have on the state level, which generally says the caption of the bill has to match the body of the bill. Otherwise, it's unconstitutional and the whole bill is thrown out. We need that on the federal level because they are trying to slick us by passing bills that are popular, that the legislators who vote for them haven't read, the people don't read, and are the product of what they call add-ons, so that something with a title that sounds exciting or worthwhile actually has the exact opposite effect when you read what it says. So there you go.
I
I'll
appreciate that.
pass it back. All right.
I appreciate that. It sounds to me, and I'm gonna get off, guys. It sounds to me that the dearth of the kind of leadership and power flexing that we need to have puts us in this position because, in my mind, modern day lynchings, as with Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna, and so many others, where we've had the inhumane treatment, is what I want to build to encapsulate. I wanted to say hands off of freedmen, hands off of the descendants of chattel slavery. You do not treat them or intimidate them in any such way that will reflect anything connected to the horrors of the past, which are actually the horrors of the present. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you letting me speak.
All right, thank you,
Thank you,
brother.
sir. That was good. One little personal comment. I get kind of offended about what people call a lynching because in my family, I had an uncle who actually got lynched. Now, my grandfather and a great uncle went and murdered the two deputy sheriffs that they thought were responsible for that lynching, but there was another crowd, but they thought that would suffice to send a message out. And interestingly enough, in that parish where this lynching occurred, there weren't any more lynchings for quite a few decades, and that was way, way back. So they had to flee the state, and that's been a long time ago, been more than 100 years. Like I'm 75 this year, so that goes back a long way when that went down. So it is what it is.
That's thank you to tell the truth. I wanted to just kind of camel back on what Judge Joe Brown and to tell the truth we're talking about. It's in the Jumbotron Congress. You go to congress.gov and type in HR 55. I have it up on my other screen, and it's, I mean, I looked at it before and read it. It takes you, it takes you like 90 seconds to read it, and it's really not a serious bill at all. I mean, it's just a really, disappointment. And I did let Congressman Bobby Rush know that it's a disappointing bill, and it's not worthy of having Emmett Till's name attached to it. It's just a nothing burger, just like Judge Joe Brown has spoken about. Um,
Now, let me
so
get you. You
yes,
want to
sir.
find out what happens with Emmett Till? There is a good sister who is a researcher who's been doing this almost 40 years and has written a whole bunch of books on Emmett Till. As a matter of fact, they had a thing on TV where somebody tried to plagiarize some of her material, and what they put on Emmett Till just doesn't have anything to do with the reality. I met her when both of us were interviewing Emmett Till's mother and his stepfather in Memphis back in the 1990s. So let me give you, if I can, she's written a number of books on it. I'm trying to pull up her details for anybody that's interested uh, without dropping the call. I think I figured that out. So let me bring that up. Her name is Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems, Weems, and she is a professor up at Ohio in the Ohio State University complex. Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems.
Yeah.
I wrote the foreword for her latest book, but you should read it. It's got a lot to say about Emmett Till. And, ma'am, I agree with you. I think it is a disservice to Emmett Till's name to attach what they came up with to his memory. And let me say something else, too. After those rednecks were acquitted for killing Till, they gave an interview to Look magazine. They were paid for it, and I read the original when it first came out.
They admitted to it
Back when, and let me know. I know not only did they admit to it. Let me tell you what they said about Emmett Till. He said this young buck wanted to get nasty with us and tell us what we could do with ourselves. So, in other words, they got him tied to a chair, beating on him, and this preteen has got the courage and the balls to tell them basically to drop dead, kill me if you got to, you can't get to me. So some of us need to think about that when we start excusing these folk who I ran from the police because I got scared, or I did it because I was scared. Here's this 14-year-old boy in the South, back when they were lynching, back when the KKK and the White Citizens Council were abject dangers and threats. He's tied up. They got him in a hut getting ready to kill him, and he had balls enough to say F you. Now, just think about that.
All right, Judge. I put the sister Clenora Weems Emmett Till project in the jumbotron, so everybody can check that out. That was the reference you just gave.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's up there, family. Y'all can check it out in the jumbotron. There's a link to the Emmett Till project by Dr. Clenora Weems. Check that out.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have some people who are doing the job. They just don't get a whole lot of play.
Thank you, Logic, for that, and Judge Joe Brown. And next up, I see people waiting. I think G Boot. I think you
Well,
either.
it's not Naheem, then the black
I apologize. Yeah,
the black
Naeem.
Zayas, and then the G Boot.
Okay, we're gonna do it in that order. Asking everybody to please mute unless you're speaking, unless you're the judge. Thank you so much.
Yeah, peace. What's going on, family? Hey, how you doing, Judge Joe Brown? I don't know if you remember me, but we interviewed you on our channel last year through our sister Roz. Thank you for doing this. And I just want to say we appreciate you, man. We really, really do. My
Thank you, young brother.
my question centers around. I seen somebody make a post that said Dane Calloway was threatening the elder Judge Joe Brown. So I immediately jumped like, where is this going on at? Like we ain't trying
What
to hear.
happened?
Huh?
What happened is I was talking on somebody's talk show about
Mm-hmm.
manhood, and they set up an ambush, and he called in, and he got to talking about spaceships taking black Africans from there to the Americas 250,000 years ago. And he wound up threatening me. He said, look, I get to Memphis. I'm going to look you up. I said, you're going to look me up when you get to Memphis. So you're going to do me some harm? Yeah. and what you gonna do? I say, young brother, I said, and I hesitate to call you that because I think you are a fool. You might find out that young fools don't become old fools. They get
That's
widowed
right.
out.
That's right.
So anyway, this is my town, and I told him, I said, if you want to find me, somebody can direct you to me one way or the other. Come on. But I don't suggest you do it. I just suggest that you stop pimping the people. So he's talking Kool-Aid because part of his program is if we do right, then the aliens are coming back and taking us to their planet as a reward.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say this if Dane Calloway is listening, but before you get to Memphis, I'm down in Georgia. Stop here and see me first. That's the elder.
Yeah.
Come see me first. You ain't
Yeah.
gonna make it to see the elder, but I'm just putting it out there if he's listening.
See, let me explain what I'm doing. I'm 75 this year. I'm in very good health. I'm out going trying to jog a mile every day. And I remember when we boys used to sit down and grandfathers, not necessarily our own, would tell us about things that went on. And there was a grapevine where all of the men would tell the young boys what had happened in the past, how things worked, and all of that. And I just went back over my life, and I never was really into what I was doing because I was just there. But I know a lot of stuff that I ought to be telling folk before I die while I'm still breathing. I remember I had a Nigerian roommate in college. His name was Fasa. He was into nuclear physics. And he was telling us a story that I've seen repeated in different versions. He was saying that his great grandfather had been a boy. This was way back in the 19th century. And his grandfather took him down by a river and showed him this embankment and said, boy, if times ever get hard and there's a drought, which we sometimes have, you can dig in here like this and you'll find roots that are swollen with liquid that can give nourishment to your people. And he said one time when he was a little kid, his grandfather remembered that. He hadn't thought about it since he had been 5 or 6, and he showed the village where to go to get this food. See, that kind of passed down is what we ought to be doing. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I don't need the money, though I am selling barbecue sauce, but I sell sauce and service. You get it. But anyway, it's something that needs to be passed on, and it's a tradition that we have been neglecting. That's it. All right. Well, any comments, questions, or what? I think I interrupted the flow. I apologize.
No, Judge Joe, we're here to, build with you. That's what this is all about. I do have a link to Judge Joe Brown barbecue sauce in the Jumbotron. So that's the link for his barbecue sauce. I mean, y'all gotta pick yourself up a couple bottles of it and try it out. Support Judge Joe Brown. Thank you.
Well, I tell you what,
we gonna order.
Shipping for 3 bottles is the same as it is for one. We're working on it, and it's going live in stores in a couple of months, so it'll be all over the country. Check it out. It's pretty good, and we'll be down here in Memphis in May for the barbecue cooking contest. So we will be doing our thing and basically giving the stuff away, and come and join us. But anyway, that said, the commercial break is over. Now, let's get back to the business at hand. Questions? Ask me.
All right, I think it's G Boot. You're up next. Go ahead, unmute your mic, brother.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Judge. This is Counselor Richard out of New Orleans.
Oh, lawyer, what's going on?
All right, Judge. How you doing? It's always good to hear you. Hear your voice and your knowledge and wisdom. Well, pardon me if I'm not up on current events with regards to this Emmett Till bill. I'm actually just looking at the House's website and the text of it. But I wanted to point out something to what you said, Judge, also, You know, we talk a lot about Mamie Till. There's much talk about Mamie and Emmett, but no one ever talks about what happened with Emmett's father, Lewis Till. And Lewis Till, I just want to point out, was an American soldier who was also executed by the United States Army in 1945 for being found guilty of sexually assaulting two white women and murdering a third. However, there was a book that was written in 2016 by an author, and I want to share this with everyone. His name is Edgar Weideman, who explored the circumstances of Lewis Till's conviction, and obviously how he did not get a fair trial. It's called Writing to Save a Life, the Lewis Till file. And when those two bastards were on trial for murdering Emmett and they were acquitted, two Mississippi senators, James Eastland and John C. Stennis, uncovered details. They leaked it to the press about Lewis Till's execution and crime. Now, I point that out to current events. Those two men that I just named, Eastland and Stennis, did you know who their mentee was? Judge, I know you
Joe
know.
Biden, yeah, I heard him
Right.
introduce that scumbag in 1972 outside the state capitol in Dover, Delaware. They said he was the up and coming new face of the Dixiecrats. And this fool got up with a ducktail and he started talking about how well he knew the Negro, and he and James Eastland were going to do something about taking the Negroes off of the streets so they couldn't turn them into jungles, and the Negro children out of the schools so they couldn't turn them into zoos. And that was Joe Biden.
That was Joe
Wow.
Biden. And this is
And
what.
I'll tell you something else too about that. What was going on, for those who like the old time Turner movies, with Humphrey Bogart and Adolph Manjou? He was the guy with the pencil thin mustache, kind of heavy, that played the villains in a lot of Bogart movies. My old man was a vet in World War II, and he used to have gatherings over at the house with some of his World War II buddies, and they would talk about how Adolph Manjou and Humphrey Bogart came to England to try and keep the white women from dealing with the black soldiers, and how they kept talking about black soldiers are apes, they've got tails, and they used to laugh and talk about, yeah, the English women wanted to see the tails. They knew about that thing that happened to Till's father because there were a whole lot of black soldiers, not a whole lot, but several handfuls that were misprosecuted to make examples to discourage black folk, black men from screwing the white women over in England.
Right. I knew. I mean, look, my grandfathers, both of them World War II veterans, and I became friends when my family and I evacuated up in Baton Rouge with a gentleman, God bless his soul, Albert C. Odell, who was a veteran of World War II, and he had white English girlfriends from World War II, and they would even ask him, "AC, do you have a tail?" It's like, and he pulled his pants down. Where you see your tail at? He's like, those Yanks, those white Yanks, I'll never trust them again. They said you all blacks, you had tails, which is what they did, but they were obviously envious of black men. In fact, there was a big one of the big battles during segregation in the military, and I'm sure Judge, you've heard about it, was at a bar out in England where black soldiers were actually fighting white soldiers. They had to fight to the death to
Yeah.
save their lives back. Yeah.
Well, even more so, in Sydney, Australia, 1944, they had a black division that was on leave there. And after that, the Australians refused to let black Americans in there without special visa permission for a long time. What happened is a white division was on leave there, and they wound up blowing the bridges into Sydney, and they had some artillery and machine gun battles for 4 days, and a lot of folk got killed because they were misdoing the black folk. Jackie Robinson, the baseball player. We honor Rosa Parks rightfully for refusing to give up her seat on a bus, but 14 years before, Jackie Robinson had been an officer with the 761st Armored Regiment after he had initially been an officer with the 10th Cavalry. That was the Buffalo Soldiers. And he escorted one of his fellow officers' wives home He had been the officer of the day and he had his 45 still strapped on. So when he refused to remove to the back of the bus, he was surrounded. And the testimony at his court martial was he had his 45 out, round in the chamber, hammer back, and said, some MF is going to die tonight besides me. So he got acquitted at the court martial. He revoked his waiver of an ankle injury playing football, and the rest is history. Now, interesting thing about it, another football, baseball, basketball trivia is I played for UCLA back in the mid 60s. Jackie Robinson, Don Barksdale, and Kenny Washington were in the same All American backfield at UCLA back in the 30s. Robinson never played baseball until he turned pro. He was a track man and at one time held the American records in the 100-yard dash to 220, and he was an All-American halfback in the UCLA backfield. Don Barksdale ran the high hurdles in the 440, and he was the wide receiver for UCLA, but he never played basketball, but the Lakers hired him as the first black man in the NBA. Kenny Washington was the quarterback, and UCLA got so much pushback for having a black quarterback. They called him the tailback, which has stayed the same at that school since. And the Rams hired him to be the first brother playing in the NFL. That was 1946 for the Rams. That was 46-47 for the Lakers. And that was Jackie Robinson came into the majors same time. So that's an interesting little bit of trivia.
Well, Jackie Robinson was a member of the 761st Tank Battalion, which was the Black Panthers, which was they actually served under Patton at one time.
Third Army.
Yes, the Third Army, and he was transferred to the 758th Battalion. But just to point out, too, Judge, that battle I was referring to with the blacks and white soldiers was called the Battle of Bainbridge Bridge. If anybody wants to look that up, but I don't want to take up everybody else's time because I know that they have other people that want to speak, but it's always a pleasure. And I just want to say that this Congressional Black Caucus, I've said it before, even on your show, Judge, I've said it on my channel, they're a waste of space.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We agree with you.
They're surrogates.
Thanks, G-Boot.
They're surrogates for the LGBT cults, counselor.
Right.
They don't represent us. They use their color to get elected. And then if you look at their records, damn few of them have actually done anything of substance for the black folk that keep returning them to office year after year.
Right.
Anyway, counselor is a good criminal defense lawyer down in Louisiana. So you get in trouble, give him a lookup. He'll give you a good criminal defense.
All right. That's great info. So follow G-Boot, who's on right now. We're going to keep you up on stage a little bit longer, G-Boot, so that people can follow you, sir. Okay. And the Black Zayas, you've been waiting for a while. So you can unmute yourself, the Black Zayas, and come on in.
All right. It's great to speak to the judge. And I just wanted to tell the judge, thank you. Anytime we see you in any media platform, we know we're not going to be embarrassed, which is, I can't say that for a lot of, the other black men in the media, so-called men. I did have a question.
Thank you.
No, it's all love, Judge. I did have a question. I see a lot on Twitter where they compare the Bill Cosby, they go back, 14, 15 years to prosecute, and then they pull people from 40 years to be character witnesses against him. And I see a lot of comparison on, especially Twitter, where they compare that, how they can do that, violate all types of statute of limitations. But then the lady Carol Bryant is still alive, and she's an accomplice to murder. They could be,
the Emmett Till thing, yeah.
Yes. So my thing is, I don't know if she's in her mid to late 80s. If they can do this to Bill Cosby, pulling back witnesses from the 70s and 80s, why can't they retroactively exonerate these black kids that were murdered, in the early 1900s? Why couldn't they prosecute somebody that's still here?
If they wanted to do an Emmett Till bill, they should have done something about that. But they didn't. It's rank hypocrisy. It makes me angry. Very angry.
So there's no legal. I mean, because you're the judge, there's no
It's
legal.
prosecutorial discretion.
Okay.
America inherited that from the English. We have absolute prosecutorial discretion. Whoever the constitutional prosecutorial authority is for the governmental entity, whether it be the Attorney General of the United States, the district United States attorneys, or the district attorney general, or attorney general, or district attorney, or state's attorney for the state, they have absolute discretion when it comes to prosecuting or not prosecuting, though grand juries may independently indict. That's called by presentment. There are three ways of felony prosecution can be implemented in America: by information, where both sides agree there's probable cause; by indictment, where the prosecutorial entity presents in front of a grand jury; or by what they call a presentment, where the grand jury independently investigates and acts on their own. Now they ought to go after that woman.
Didn't I want to say Biden's Department of Justice just closed the case like this past year?
Yeah, didn't he say he wasn't really going to do anything for us?
I don't remember him saying that. I just remember it being opened and then it being closed and there was no resolve.
Of course not. There never is under him. Remember, he's the one that was so deep into one rock will get you 5 years.
Yeah.
And look at his crackhead son smoking up plenty of rocks, and he's getting millions of dollars because he's fronting off doing extortion and bribery. By the way, speaking of the Ukraine, I have looked at the indictments that the Ukrainian government returned against both Hunter and Joe Biden that are still pending for felonies, multiple felonies, and we have an apprehension and extradition treaty with the Ukraine. Strange we aren't doing anything about it. But I've never trusted Joe Biden since day one. I was practicing law about the time he got elected first, and I've seen just absolutely horrible fallout from what he and certain other Dixiecrat senators have done with the criminal law and how it impacts our community. And it's not the 1994 crime bill. That's the least. There's the 91, there is the 87, the 81, the 79, and the 77. So they're generally worse. So I wouldn't count on anything coming out of him. Now, I'm not pro-Republican. I'm an independent. But I just don't like wrong, and we're getting bamboozled. Just like with this Emmett Till thing and the Anti-Lynch Act, which is ridiculous because it doesn't have anything to do with the subject.
That's right. Talk to him, Judge.
So that's all, Judge. So, yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time. But again, I do want to thank you. Like I said, you look on CNN, this black guy is crying, the bald-headed one, what's his name? Van Jones. He cries every 4 days. Then, you got these Negroes that, let me touch your hair, let me tap your head. I know I don't have to worry about that one. And he's going, I like the way you dismantled, what's this other guy? What's his name?
I don't remember. That idiot that's
he thinks men can get pregnant.
Surrogates.
Yeah. And I watched that like 15 times.
Aren't they on Crying Negro Network? CNN.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Say, boy, wipe them tears off your face. What's the matter with you? Sitting up there crying for all that kind of nonsense. What's the matter?
He's not the only one. Then they got what's his name? Don Anderson. What's his name? Don Lemon. He's another one.
Yeah, that's CNN. The Black Zayas, thank you so much, sir. We're gonna keep it moving with the Prophet. If you could come back to the stage, sir, after we do some rotation, okay? The Prophet. Thank you so much.
Hey, good evening, Sister Roz. Always good to be in space with you, Brother Logic, and always Good to be in the space with my brother, Lord Albert, who was here earlier. Thank you, Honorable Judge Joe Brown, for all your advocacy. We appreciate your life's work. And it's interesting that, I'm glad you're on here today, sir. I was thinking about the young brother, since you're from Memphis, Tennessee, the young brother Larry Payne, who was killed by the police back in 1968 during the first march for in Memphis for sanitation workers. So it's good to have you around, Judge Joe Brown. And, Dane Calloway is just a disrespectful young man. I don't know where he comes from with his pseudo history, with his unfactual knowledge, and his poor education to even want to challenge, somebody, a giant and a legend such as yourself, Judge. So,
Well, you know what it is. We used to call it pimping the movement, hustling the revolution, that kind of thing. One of the problems that we've had is we get strong doing stuff, and then some of our own take us down because it's a hustle. They're fundamentally dishonest. They don't care whether they hurt. Uh, they embezzle, they forge, they deal with extortion, and they prey upon those who need something to grasp a hold of. There's some good preachers, and then there's some pulpit pimps. The pulpit pimps rely upon the fear of those that have been doing wrong, about going to hell, and then they tell them all they have to do is believe and contribute if they want to see the pearly gates. They're always hustlers and pimps of a situation. So we have to watch out for them and expose them.
absolutely, Judge. I definitely agree with you, sir. And that goes from people who are celebrities in our community. That goes for our political leadership, which is weak and infantile and don't put any policy on the table, don't challenge the administration, and they just go along to get along, Judge. And, we definitely appreciate your presence here because we need strong leadership. And so what
Thank
happened?
you, sir.
Yes, sir. What happened, Judge, this political class and this just professional class of some of these black people have left us vulnerable to this situation. So now the masses have to take up the cause and fight for our reparations. And we definitely appreciate you around to give us some guidance. And I definitely thank you because I was thinking about you when you were on stage. I was thinking about the case where you was you was the judge of the case of an assassination of Dr. King in Memphis. So I was
Yeah.
thinking about that as
That's
well.
an injustice, and they've hidden what really happened. It wasn't James Earl Ray. It was two Marine Corps snipers recruited from Quantico, Virginia, where the FBI training base is located. They used an XM-21, which was a converted M14. They had specially loaded subsonic ammunition. The shot came from the fire station, not from the bushes, not from the firehouse. People think the shot came from the bushes because the sound echoed off of the front of the Rain Motel. And that's where the echo is cast over there. There were some peculiarities about a subsonic bullet. I won't get into it because ordinarily with a rifle, the bullet gets there before the sound. On a subsonic setup, what happens is the sound gets there first. It deflected over to the bushes, so King gets hit, then you hear the sound when it reflects back. It was an echo, so that's what there's a lot of confusion. The Memphis homicide detectives were adamant that Ray wasn't even in town. And see, they've hidden this thing, and we have a file up there full of memorandum from the FBI where they were discussing killing Dr. King and whether he would be more dangerous dead or as a martyr or alive. And they weren't even concerned about civil rights. That's the irony of the whole thing. They were worried about him revitalizing labor and galvanizing the anti-war movement, not civil rights. You see, the truth of the matter is that this country doesn't give a damn about you protesting. Protesting and marches haven't gotten us civil rights. It was people worried about young black folk burning a city down, or young black folk deciding to arm and run patrols in the community like the Panther Party did, or what happened outside of Selma that a lot of the TV stations censored was that when these cops put the dogs on the protesters, the protesters were suffering, but when the dogs went into the crowd of ordinary street folk, they killed the dogs and jacked the cops up. See, that's what they were interested in, not somebody peacefully demonstrating. I just tell you that because I had to do research on it back when.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was alive in high school when it happened. So yeah, okay.
And we thank you for your original source. So we definitely appreciate that, Judge.
All right, young man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir. Have a great one. Appreciate
All right, the prophet. Thank you so much, sir. Next up, waiting was it no taxation or Alexis?
I think it was INT righteous, and then no taxation, then Alexis.
Okay. All right. Let's go in that order. Thank you so much.
Good evening. How's it going? And thank you for sharing your space with me. First off, Judge, I want to tell you I appreciate you and congratulations on the barbecue sauce. I had two brief questions. What do you say for people who are black African American males that are looking at politics and seeing all the symbolism and the disrespect in the symbolism that are wanting to get involved? What do you say to those who are wanting to get involved and get active?
Well, politics isn't what a lot of people think it is. If you want to see basic politics, next time you are at the zoo, just spend your whole visit watching the chimps or the baboons and you'll see politics. It's a primate thing, it's a fundamental human thing. When you deal with a
Right.
meeting with some of your homies or a frat or a club at school, that's politics too. Now, we need it cleaned up because 55 years ago, people were putting in place some stratagems to get control, and it wasn't even for racist purposes. It was for purposes of destroying masculinity, the traditional home and family,
Wow.
manhood, womanhood, childhood. And a lot of black people who get elected because of their appearance don't deliver to their constituents. They deliver nonsense for the other side that is further disrupting something we have a problem with, which is lack of nuclear traditional homes with mom and dad in them, or at least appreciation for both.
Wow. Thank you, Judge. And my second question would be me and my associates have made a decision about voting, which is causing us to get a lot of kickback from family members and friends, which is we feel as if we should hold our vote until we're receiving something tangible or something that will effectively improve our community. I just want
Well,
to know because I respect your opinion as an elder.
okay,
What is your opinion?
let me give you my opinion on that. That's
Yes,
effective,
sir.
but you know what is even more effective?
Yes, sir.
Hold your nose so you don't have to smell it and vote for the opposition. Every other ethnic group in this country, when one group that has been depending upon them for their votes gets too far out of line, they vote for the other side, not because they like the other side, but because they
Yes, sir.
want to punish the group that has been relying on them without delivering.
Absolutely.
In other
Thank-
words, here's where our conundrum is right now. For
Okay.
one party, they don't have to give us anything or deliver anything, but we'll still vote for them.
Right.
On the other party, no matter what they do, we are not going to vote for them. So neither has an incentive to deliver anything to us.
Wow.
So what we have to do is what every other ethnic group does is periodically to say, I don't care who the other side's candidates are.
Wow.
This side we've been voting for is so damn bad, I'm voting against them. So don't stay at home. Use your vote to cut and hurt.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Powerful,
Judge. I
powerful.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, Judge Joe Brown, I wanted to thank you for that answer because I know people like Logic and myself and others from United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. We've been trying to tell people that same thing, but I think people listen to you because you're an elder. I mean, I'm probably somewhat an elder to these, some of the younger brothers and sisters too, in a way. But when it comes from someone like yourself, that knowledge and that wisdom, people listen. So I'd really appreciate your answer to that, brother.
Well, let me
Um,
tell you something too.
yes,
I
sir.
I have to confess, I am beneficiary to some input from that 55 years ago. I had the fortune at UCLA of being the teaching assistant for a woman who was a visiting professor emeritus from the University of Moscow. She was a good communist, She at one time had been the highest ranking woman on the Soviet Politburo. And at one time, she had been propaganda chief for the brand new KGB, and before that, for its predecessor, the NKVD. And at one time, she answered to only two people: Joe Stalin, premier of the Soviet Union, Comrade Beria, who ran the secret police and who became premier, and a third, at one point, she was backup chief commissar to Nikita Khrushchev when he was chief commissar in the Stalingrad siege. He became the premier that had it out with John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And for a little FYI, an interesting little historical anecdote, Nikita Khrushchev, premier of the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War, was born and raised in the Ukraine. Ah, interesting little historical tidbit. One other thing about the Ukraine, the area that is trying to get away from the Ukraine and become part of Russia again, has a lot of African descendants who are descendant of Africans who were brought over to the Soviet Union in the late 50s to curry favor with East Africa. Well, the Ukraine is in the southern portion of Africa, and it's not as cold as it is, say, in the Moscow area. And I imagine somebody from Africa might appreciate that. So you got a lot of Africans who settled in the Ukrainian areas. And some of their descendants don't like the way they have been treated by mainstream Ukraine. They weren't asked, and a lot of Ukrainians did not want to leave what was the former Soviet Union, now Russia. And one of the grievances these African descendants have is that a lot of the women and children that are their kinfolk have been kidnapped and forced into sex slavery and slave brothels that they still have in the Ukraine that are run by their organized crime factions. So they started shooting at some of the mainstream Ukrainians, and they are part of that cabal that invited the Russians in. And by the way, Putin is propagandizing it as he's saving the area from criminality and Nazification. And he might have a point when we look at how Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are so severely censoring anybody who disagrees with the official propaganda line. So we need to keep that in mind. So it's like, be aware of all sides instead of what's fed to you. That said, I pass. Any more questions?
Amen, Judge Joe Brown. Thank you so much. We try to tell people vet everything 2022. Don't just take anything at its word. Go back in and learn it and know it for yourself. Thank you, sir. I think no taxation was up, and then Alexis.
Hey, Roz, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for
That
asking.
that's good. I see you brought us another one of these important occasions where we all need to come and get the information. So I thank you for that. And you got the other people with you, Logic. I don't know him, but I know his work. And Naheem, Nas, these are heavy hitters. Alexis, heavy hitters you got out here. So I'm happy to see it. Judge, I'm in your age group, but not quite your age. And
So you want to bona fide LTYJs, huh,
yeah,
sister?
they call me auntie, and I like
You
that.
know
I
what
like that.
LTYJ is, don't you?
Say it again.
LTYJ.
No, what is that?
That's a luscious, tender, young, juicy. In other words, you're a young woman to me. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm trying to be. I'm still. I went out and got me a puppy. I said I'm going on a different life journey. I ain't fooling with black folks no more. I didn't know this dog was gonna come in here blackety black. He about to run me crazy over here. But listen, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but as the conversation went on, my questions changed. And I'm in the same position. I feel the same way, not in the same position, but I feel the same way as you in that I feel like I need to teach as much as I can before I, hang up my hat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I have been listening to a lot of conversation recently with younger people about the Congressional Black Caucus on both sides. People that say dismantle it, And I wouldn't have a problem with that. And people that are saying, no, let's turn it into something else. Although the people that are saying that are not quite the people, no disrespect to them, but not quite the people that really all black Americans in this country need. Meaning the goal should be reparations, because that's the only thing that's going to really, a comprehensive reparations plan is the only thing that's going to get us out of this mess. Otherwise, we can go extinct, right?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
and so I've been thinking and thinking and thinking, and I have been involved in politics. My first demonstration was at age 3 in Oklahoma City with Claire Looper. I don't know if you remember her, but I was one of Claire's kids, and I was the youngest one. And
I have a vague recollection of that. I
yeah, they
was in
just named the
California.
library after her down there in Oklahoma City. She did the
I was in
first. This was
California.
before. Yeah, this was back in the 50s, and
Yeah.
she desegregated the lunch counters. That was her thing down there in Oklahoma City, no place else. But anyway, so I've been involved and was raised in this political situation, the political scene, and that's my lane. Do you think, in your opinion, do you think that we should do a takeover of the Congressional Black Caucus, even if it's not the political party that is attached to the Democrats? The old school, Ron Dellums and them, they did a good job. I can't say they didn't. When they initiated the Congressional Black Caucus, it was important, and it did good work for the time that they could do the good work, right? But it changed over years. Their constituents changed. Everything has changed, and they're not effective for us anymore. In fact, they're very ineffective, and they're very costly to us now. Do you think?
Agreed.
Do you think, because of the history and because of the place of honor that it has in the Democratic Party, do you think we ought to just take it over, groom people to take it over, and
Well,
let it work
first
for
off,
us? Or do you think we ought to just dismantle it and call it a day? And let me add to it, and get our own Congressional Black American Caucus that has nothing to do with any political party, because I think that might be a winner too. What you
okay,
think?
some of your points are quite valid. Here's the one thing that needs to be taken into consideration. In order to change the club, you have to become a member of the club. So, to change it, other than a general electoral backlash from the constituents of the Black Caucus, we have to get people elected who are in a position to set up an alternative. And we're not doing that because we're too busy watching NBA, NFL, MLB, the Housewives, and all of the nonsensical reality shows and the dramas and all of this other stuff. We have to focus and pay attention. We have to get out of the posture of being responsive to nonsense like take your booties to the poll and start dealing with issues. So when we do that and we start electing people who are actually honestly representing us instead of using our votes to become surrogates for another interest group or groups, then we can talk about changing the Black Caucus, and I suspect it will change itself. I spoke to a gentleman just a little while ago, and I said, don't just not vote, vote against the party that is not delivering to you, whoever that party is in your area. Now, that being said, I am privy to the fact that when in the 50s, I know there were very few black Democrats, except those who tended to support FDR and Truman. And being a Democrat and being black just didn't match. Damn near every black person was a Republican until about 1960. They voted for FDR and Truman, but they didn't vote Democratic any other way, especially not locally. So we can evolve just like the Dixiecrats left the Democratic Party and went to the Republicans. We have seen LGBTQ take over the Democratic Party, and their interests are not ours because we are so dependent upon strong nuclear families, manhood, womanhood, childhood. It doesn't do us any good to support somebody who's trying to undercut us as a cult. and destroy what we are about. That said, we need to do something astutely on our level that we can do something about, where we spread something that is truthful rather than the propagandistic lie that we keep getting told. Now, remember, I took political science and I was a teaching assistant for somebody that was head of the propaganda organ for the KGB. So I heard it from the source. And I'm looking at classic propaganda that the left, the Democratic Party, is using on us right now to our detriment, where you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, you can get anybody to believe it. And the extra caveat I'd add to it, you'll even start believing it yourself. So we need to get away from those who would try to appeal to us by saying, take your booties to the poll, and start dealing with, these are the issues you need to be aware of. Pay attention to them because they impact you on a daily basis. By the way, FYI, I interviewed the woman that started that Take Your Booties to the Poll. And we on the show looked up the people that were acting in it. Do you know 1/3 of them were trannies? So they're trying to entice men to the polls by looking at bare man booty shaking on a pole.
All right,
So
listen,
that just shows you how ridiculous it gets.
listen. I can believe it. Here's one thing that I know for sure that my father taught me a long time ago about politics, and you were right when you said monkeys at the zoo. Uh, Politics, you got to understand, they're all crooks, and they go to lunch with each other. They sit next door to each other in the offices, and they say hello in the hallways. And your friend in the morning is your enemy in the afternoon. And that's just the way politics is. It's a dirty, filthy game, but we have got to have people in the game playing it for us rather than against us, or even if they're going with an initial party and not putting black politics first. I was taught about black politics, and that's what I do. That's why I'm an independent, and I understand why you tell people to vote, because my politics for me is very local, and I don't have any potholes over here. That's all I can tell you. Okay. But other people are not being served because they do not know. We have got to get the people like the Rozes, like the Logics, like the Nas, like the Alexis, like the Kellys and the Stevens and the Dons and stuff to step up and be in those positions, because those are really who our leaders are across this country. Now, I've talked to you. Those names I named are going from California all the way back up east here to New York, and I'm in upstate New York. And so we have the people that we need. We really do. But we've got to get them in there, and we have got to teach them the real game so that they can understand exactly how it's supposed to be played.
By the
Otherwise,
way, let me make an announcement.
okay.
They talked me into running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee in 2023.
I remember.
So
I know. We are
I'm
Ron Hurd. I'm a friend of Ron Hurd's.
that's a good brother.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think you ought to do it. It ain't like
I
you can't get
am.
the money.
He
It,
is. Yeah, he's gonna do that. Oh,
Good. I know
okay.
you want me to go, Roz. Okay, I'm going. I got to sit at the feet and get my little
Th-
information too now. All right,
I
I'm going.
understand.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that no taxation. I heard my name being used as in a pretty humorous way, and we're gonna keep it moving. Just set the room.